Hello, everybody. Let me tell you what's going on here. So I'm trying to cut a video right now on the backwards nature of reality. I know what I want to talk about. I don't have any idea what's going to be said, but I know the topic, which is typically all I need. The only problem I'm having is that video guy is not in the house. And when I say that video guy is not in the house, what I mean is that I don't cut these videos, says something that once thought it was a Fred. They just happen. And I would like to cut them more often for you, to be honest with you. It'd be better for my channel. But I can't cut them when I can't cut them. I don't know if I'm going to be able to cut one today or not. I hope that this telling you about it will somehow open up whatever it is that does these videos so that it will come in and do something for us. But I don't really know. So we just have to find out together. So, the backwards nature of reality. If you are not yet realized, or if you have realized and then managed to overcome that, like I did, briefly, or for months, it makes no difference. If it feels like that you had something and you lost it, or that you've moved into or out of something, this video is for you, all of that. If you are deep in clearing, this video is still for you. If you believe that you are awakening, or that you are realized, then this video is definitely for you. And the reason I say that with such vigor is that I really do. I get a lot of people who believe that they are enlightened, but just think they just need a little, there's just one little piece that's missing. But see, that little piece that's missing, that is what awakening or realization is. It's putting that little piece in. That's what I do for a living. That's what I do as a teacher. And it's what I've been doing online for the last 10 years, right here. 10 years, just slipping that little piece in people's puzzles. And they seem to be delighted, right? Because by the time they get to me, they're usually pretty miserable. Why is that? I mean, because they had a chance. They've already gone through, they've already visited Eckhart. They've already gone through Adyashanti, right? Byron Katie is a distant memory, whatever. They go through many, many teachers. And when things don't pan out for whatever reason, there's nothing wrong with any of those teachers. But when things don't pan out and they get desperate, then they start looking at me. And they didn't look at me earlier because I had I was declaring I had a magic trick that I could wake them up in a single sitting. And I took a lot of flack early on because people didn't believe that I could do what I can do. And actually, the reason that I am not booked from now to death is because people still don't believe that I can do what I can do, even though I've done it a couple of thousand times over the last 10 years. And if it's not a couple of thousand, it's certainly well over 1,000. So I'm not, who cares? What I'm trying to do is make sure that I don't have too much ego in this. I won't declare that there's none. I mean, I'm talking to you. I know this is being recorded. I know it's going to be on YouTube. There's a little ego afloat. Guess what? Because realization is not a vaccination against self-centered thoughts. It is nearly a vaccination if you carry it through, if you pursue it, and if you're lucky. This is a lucky unit. I didn't do anything to deserve realization when I did. That was 15 years ago. I didn't do anything to deserve it, and I don't know that I've done anything to deserve it since, right? But I've tried to. I've tried to pay my way in after the fact. Tried to do some good here. Tried to be, I mean, the whole idea of worthiness is just absolutely ridiculous, but you can't tell that to this unit. It still wants to be able to feel like it is sort of worthy. It's ridiculous. You can't, the problem is that I know that. I, awakeness, know that. But the patterns here, the conditioning here, the conditioning in the body with DNA, the conditioning of the body and mind, which is everything that has happened since birth. All of that prevents me from seeing the truth. It's part of the trick. See, and if you're unawakened, you are right dead set in God's plan. How do we know? Look around. What percentage, well, even, I mean, look at seekers. What percentage of seekers wake up? I have to tell you that it's pretty small. It's real small, but for the general public, it's infinitesimal. It's not infinitesimal in non-duality by any means. So it happens in non-duality, you know, with different teachers in different ways. I don't understand how any way works other than mine, really, but they don't understand how mine works, so we're even. But there is one difference, and that's the fact that the percentage of people who wake up with me is very, very high. And I don't know really of a lot of other teachers that can get up and say that. And I have to say that I've said that 10 years ago, and I'm still saying it 10 years later, and I've not been run off the internet. And I do have lots and lots and lots of testimonials, and I have students who've been with me for years. So if that was not true, then one would think that these brilliant people, which pretty much everybody in non-duality is smart, so one would think that these brilliant people would take up and leave, and they haven't. So lots of them have, don't get me wrong, and lots of them, it's not a curse. It doesn't mean you come to this teaching and if you leave it, you leave your awakening behind or anything like that. But you will often drop it on the side of the road at some point. But that's not necessarily the case. You could go get with another good teacher. Once the magic has happened, then you can help yourself along fairly well. But I couldn't, and that's, see, I have to just report what I'm trying to be so generous in my thoughts, but it's not my experience. My experience was I tried to clear it for almost 3 years on my own, and I couldn't. So I finally went out and got a teacher, and guess what? I cleared, and I cleared in a hurry because I'd already woken up 3 years before. There was plenty of wakefulness here. The truth was known, but the knower of the truth was not always known. And that's the key. It's not the knowledge. Everybody's trying to get the knowledge of non-duality. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Most people really do believe that non-duality is about information, and it's not. I had a beautiful chat yesterday for an hour. A woman I hadn't seen in a little while because of the pandemic. Even though I just mean it was in her town, it was pretty rough. She was in Colombia, South America. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina. But she woke up, I mean, she was clear as a bell yesterday. I swear to God, I hadn't talked to her in 2 years, and she was just clear as a bell. She was suffering because she hadn't learned to keep her mouth shut yet. She's still trying to tell people about this, and that is just disastrous, right? You'll know when it's time for you to tell people about this, because you'll find yourself telling people about this. But you're going to find yourself telling people that are actually then pursuing this. It's not a matter of you telling people and they're not interested. I won't talk to anybody about this except for Betsy or a few friends, if they don't give me money. It's just that simple. I've just, it's not a hobby for me, right? This is our family's business, if you will. I mean, I hate to call it a business, but what are you going to call it when I'm charging fees and making bank deposits and paying taxes and all of that? It's okay. That's okay. Spiritual teachers get to make a living, and if they're good, spiritual teachers need to, get to make a good living, just like a good carpenter gets to make a good living as a carpenter or a mechanic. The master mechanic makes more than a newbie. Why? Because the results are different. And this teaching is all about the results. And what you have backwards is that you're trying to wake up something that does not exist. Now, is it possible for something that does not exist to realize? Is it possible for something that doesn't exist to walk to the store or answer the door? Something that doesn't exist is something that doesn't exist. In other words, it's not part of what is, it's simply what's not, which means if it's what's not, it's imagination. And that's the thing, is that you've got this character that you built everything around, but it is you're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic and really think you're getting somewhere. And the odds are that you may not be, because I have certainly worked with people who were 30, 40 years, sincere seekers on this trial who didn't know. I mean, you can watch it, look on YouTube, you can see a woman who's a lifelong seeker since she was 12 years old. And she's probably my age now, which is not a spring chicken. And she comes to know herself through this teaching, live for your perusal. So she had 50 years of not knowing herself, and now she knows herself. How does that happen? I don't know, right? I mean, I know what happens, but I have no idea how, because I don't do it. I just witness it. This unit is just a lucky unit. It just got granted with some kind of bizarro gift, and because that's the only thing that could happen. And that's the truth. That this teaching arrived here because it could not arise anywhere else. It might have looked like it had been much more skillful to land virtually anywhere but here. And I couldn't argue with that. I really couldn't. But what I noticed is that it landed here anyway. So even though much of my life is like is a reasonably dark little cloud, I was just a ne'er-do-well, but only for 50 years. And that in that 50 years, I managed to step on everybody's feet that I met, everybody's. And the suffering that came from that, the suffering that was derived absolutely from selfishness. No question that that's the culprit. But, I can't blame selfishness, because what is selfishness? It's this thing in action doing for itself, and the world be damned, because this was what was important, and you are all my furniture. That's honest to God, it's the way I thought. And it was just like, I needed to get you to do what I wanted you to do, and I wanted you to think what I wanted you to think. And when you didn't think the way I wanted you to think, I suffered. And when you didn't do what I wanted you to do, I suffered. And then what you did what I wanted you to do, you didn't do it right. And I suffered. But who is it that's suffering? Can an imaginary being suffer? No, an imaginary being can't realize, and it can't suffer. There's only one thing going on. That's the first line to my first book. I just thought, let's just go ahead and let the cat out of the bag. So the first line of Beyond Recovery is there's just one thing going on. Right out front. Why beat around the bush? There's one thing going on. And the amazing part, of course, is that one thing that's going on is you. But I'm not talking to the one who thinks they're watching a Fred Davis on a YouTube, on a TV or a computer or whatever it is. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I'm talking to myself. You know why I'm talking to myself? Because there's nothing else to talk to. Just as I accuse you, because you are the one thing that's going on. But since there's only one thing going on, that means this has to be the one thing that's going on too. And since there's only one thing going on, what do you think can realize? Must be something other than the one thing going on, but I can't find. No, it's the one. It's the one thing going on that realizes. It's not an imaginary character. As Advaita said, this teaching was freedom from imagination, and I'm absolutely with him. That's the power of this teaching, is that it can release you from the power of your imagination. And when I say your imagination, I'm not talking about the one who thinks they're looking at me on a TV and all, this is the Fred and that's a Buddha statue and all that. No. I'm talking to myself. I can't talk to anything else. And you know what you can talk to? Yourself and nothing else. And you know what you can hear, what you can listen to? Yourself, and that's it. And when you think that you're one of these and you're listening to one of these to run the life of one of these, it is disastrous. It was for me. I mean, it was just absolutely disastrous. I mean, the world was trying to give me a good life experience, and I just kept overcoming that. Lots of good stuff happened. I just overcame it. It was always a lucky unit. I just couldn't hang on to anything that I lucked into because I couldn't value it. I just took everything for granted. The one thing that I had never taken for granted is this realization. I've never taken it for granted, and God forbid that I ever do. But of course, that's not Fred talking. That's awakeness talking. Because it wasn't Fred that took everything for granted. There is no Fred. There is no Fred. So what does that mean? It means that this happening that's going on right here, you witness this happening. But when I say you witness the happening, I'm not talking about that human being over there. I'm not excluding that human being over there, but I'm not talking to that human being exclusively. I'm just not. I'm talking to myself, which is all human beings, all trees, all the sky, all the animals, all the bugs, right? The whole thing. There's just one thing going on, if there's that. Been some insight down that road, but no reason to go down there just yet. This is a provisional teaching. I try to meet you on your level. That's what I do in awakening sessions, is I meet you on your level and I leave you when you're on mine. So to speak. I mean, the clarity may not be identical. It won't be identical. There's no reason to be falsely modest. And it's not about Fred anyway. It's just about awakeness. Awakeness will be clear through that unit on the truth, but it won't be stabilized. It just won't be able to hang on to it probably unless it pursues it, unless that unit gets involved. The unit will probably have to get involved with other people, not other people who are trying to wake up. You're out of that. Get involved with people who are already awake. It's been reported by sages that that's the only thing that's really necessary, is for the unawakened to spend time with the awakened. Just spend time with them. It's not like it rubs off. It's just that the absolutely impossible becomes the absolutely unmissable. Somebody woke up this week and he said, I just can't believe it. And he said, you know, it really is the most obvious thing, isn't it? And I said, yep. He said, so all that stuff, it's really true. Yep. The pointers are not pointing at Fred's liberation. They're not pointing at Bob's liberation. They're pointing at awakeness's liberation from imagination. That is what realization is. The realization is not by a character that, oh, there's God right there, I can't believe it. It's the realization of God, recognizing, well, there's nothing in that unit. There's no one home. Wow, this is a dynamic experience. It's Maya. It is illusion. The whole thing, bottom up, is illusion. If I went into that, I would just, too much, it would just, unless you're right ready for it, it would just fry your little ears. So I'm not going to go into that just yet. Let's stay with the simple path. Let's just stay with a oneness teaching. That's really simple, whether you know it or not. It's really, really simple. See, the oneness teaching, who is it that can attend a class on oneness, the oneness teaching, or a retreat would be better, a retreat or a, or an intensive or a satsang or anything like that. Who is it that can attend such a meeting about oneness? Can you find anything other than oneness? Just look around, think. Listen, the intellect is useful. I can't stand it when non-dual teachers boo-hoo intellect, or freshly awakened units boo-hoo intellect, like I did probably. But everybody starts somewhere, and we usually start with intellect. So if you were to use just your intellect, which you tend to downplay, Fred, I understand this. I understand all this. I swear I do. It's just not my experience. I don't hear that, but every week. And I sometimes we'll hear it day after day. I used to hear it a lot more. I have a lot of regular students now that are awake, or clients or friends or whatever you want to call them, that have realized. I still use the awake term. I just can't get out of it. But it's not really a good term, because see, the imaginary unit cannot wake up. So there's nothing about this thing that's awakened now, ever was, or ever will be. It's an animated cadaver. You withdraw the animation, you got yourself a human body. You can't wake the body up. It's just like dead meat falling off a truck. How are you going to wake that up, right? We might as well just go down the road and try to wake up all the roadkill. Be exactly the same thing. It really would be. Animating presence is left. There's meat or the remains, whatever, left over. Let's just see if we can wake that up. No. The only thing that can wake up is awakeness. And see, that's what you're missing. Your awakeness. You're not a noun like a body that is awake or failing to be awake. You're more like a verb. You're more like awakeness. You could even say, we'd go a little further and say you're more like awakenessing. See, there's just nothing stable there. It's just there's this movement. We notice change and we call it time. But it's not the same thing. The apparent change is abundant. There's no change either, but there's apparent change. And when there's apparent change, we call it time. And then the next thing we do is we notice that there's not a whole lot of time, that I'm running late, I'm running behind, because I should be clearer than this. Wherever you are, that's where you're supposed to be. If you're clear as a bell, wonderful. That's what you couldn't not be. And if you're still down in there, God almighty, I've been a seeker for 30 years and I just can't get it. Welcome to my world. I was a seeker for 24. So don't tell me about the long haul. I'm pretty damn familiar with it. All those people that have been disillusioned longer, 24 years is a pretty good down payment on a life of delusion. So, and there was a lot, well, I was in delusion prior to the intentional spiritual path. In other words, from birth on, I was in delusion, but I was in a different kind of delusion. I was in a completely unconscious illusion. And now what we have is a partially conscious illusion, which doesn't make any sense because an illusion can't be conscious, but it can be consciousness. And you know, consciousness comes and goes. Just check. Go and talk to a unit until it dies and see if it won't talk anymore. Animating presence is gone. We call that dead and we get away from it. Wow, this is pretty amazing. I just thought about the fact that I've been trying to cut a video all day and I couldn't get one out. And I sat down and I just told you about what was wrong. And damn, if there hadn't been a steady stream since. The backwards, that's why I call my teaching the backwards teaching, is because I work with awakeness from the first moment. I work with myself only. If you got if you are in a teaching, then if you're in like a formal teaching, you have a teacher and all that, then the chances are that you have a false notion that your teacher is awake, or that your teacher is enlightened or realized or liberated or whatever. Liberation comes hard, folks. It's hard won. Awakening experience is a gift. Most of us spurn it. Don't spurn it, pursue it. Don't try to wake up an imaginary character. I'm going to come back, and this is going to be something of a little series. I'm going to come back. We're going to talk more about this, but God Almighty, I don't know how long we'll talk today, but it's long enough. So I will see you later. Thank you so much for being with me. I love you, and come see me in Satsang. It's a whole lot of fun, and a lot of people have had their lives changed. You can too. Bye-bye.